Hey y'all, welcome to the Southern Appalachian Herbal Podcast. I'm Judson Carroll and I'm an herbalist. I'm also a wild crafter, a gardener, and herb grower. I'm coming to you from high atop the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina, just a stone's throw from the Tennessee line, overlooking the Pisgah National Forest. Absolutely surrounded by the bounty of God's green earth. I spent most of my life wandering these mountains and learning about plants from the old-timers and all sorts of characters. On this show, we'll talk about herbs and how to use them, how to find them, how to grow them, how to make preparations. We'll talk about a lot of things. We can also talk about permaculture, homesteading, foraging, and living off the land. Most anything, really. You can email me at southernappalachianherbs@gmail.com if you have a question or a comment. You can also contact me through the Grow Network, where I'm a regular contributor and a moderator for the forums. And my blog is, of course, southernappalachianherbs@blogspot.com. All right, y'all. I'm going to sit my guitar down and let's talk about herbs.
Hey y'all, welcome to today's show. We're going to get into some really interesting plants today. The herb is one that, it's particularly popular among southern herbalists. It's known as cudweed. It's known as, let's see, the Latin name is Gnaphalium. You may not know this herb, really. If you're into Appalachian herbalism, if you're into Southern herbalism, in the South we mainly use Gnaphalium obtusifolium, which is known as rabbit tobacco, and it's really one of our go-to herbs. The Gnaphalium family, though, is fairly widespread. There's several of them, and it's used much in Asian medicine. It was used a lot more in, the ancient British tradition than in modern herbal medicine today. But if you look at any of the Southern herbalists, I won't even start naming them. I think we all recognize and use this herb, as do many Native American herbs. It's really widespread and it's easy to find. So we'll get into that in a minute. But the edible plant, the spring foraging plant from the spring foraging cookbook we're going to talk about, is bugleweed. Now this is lycopus. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Ajuga reptans, which is more of a medicinal, but this is lycopus. Again, widespread. You're going to like this. Really useful. Really useful and nutritious plant, and very tasty. So, but before we get into that, I want to tell you I got a little bit of an announcement. I'm just going to tease it out this show. Looks like this spring, when the plants really start coming in. I don't have a date yet. It's for what I'm judging on is actually when the mullein gets big enough. So we're probably looking at about a month. Here or there. I'm going to give some updates, week to week, and if you're on my Judson Carroll Master Herbalist newsletter, I'll give you the details through that as well. I'm going to be in Moore County, North Carolina, specifically in Pinehurst. I have family here, and I'm obligated to be here during this time, and I think I'd like to do a plant walk. A plant walk is where an herbalist, a naturalist, a forager, whatever, takes people out on a set trail and helps them identify plants and tells you which ones are edible and which ones are useful medicinally. I want to do it here in Pinehurst because that's actually where I'm sitting right here today. I'll be back on the mountain tomorrow, but then be back down here pretty soon. I want to do it in Pinehurst because it's not really known as a real natural area. It's nowhere known for the golf courses. But there's some really good nature trails around here, and it's the Sandhills of North Carolina, which is a super unique climate. A lot of medicinal herbs and edibles grow here that are unique, and you're going to see some stuff here that, well, you may not see anywhere else, and you're going to see some stuff here that you will see other places. A lot of these plants are going to be widespread throughout, North America, but it is a unique microclimate, or well, it's not a microclimate, small region, I don't even know. Let's say the sandhills run from somewhere up around Fayetteville, North Carolina, down to McBee, South Carolina, and over about as far as Rockingham, Hamlet. I mean, if you know this area, you know where I'm talking about. Then you start getting to more of the swamps. I'd love to do a plant walk at some point in the swamps too. Maybe we could get some John boats or something, canoes, I don't know, and go out and I could show you the really unique plants that grow in the eastern swamps. Of course, I want to do this in the mountains of North Carolina as well. And yeah, we'll do the Piedmont, I'd like to do the Uwaris. I mean, at different points, but I want to start here in the Sandhills. It's really pleasant here in the spring. I mean, it's still freezing cold in the Appalachian Mountains. I mean, there's going to be snow this week. There's winds going up to 40 miles an hour. The ramps are not up. I mean, it's hard frozen ground. At the coast, yeah, it can be nice some days, but you got to stay out of the wind. The wind is still very biting. The sandhills warm up before most places. There's really good lodging around here. I mean, Pinehurst is the golf capital of the world. So whether it's Pinehurst, Southern Pines, Aberdeen, you should be able to find, motel or a hotel or, a luxury inn with spas and everything, whatever suits your budget. There's pretty good dining, actually. It kind of runs the gamut from, inexpensive places that locals eat to like really high-end, super expensive restaurants. So again, you can suit that to fit your needs. And these nature trails are really pleasant. And another special reason is one of the facilities that we might visit, actually in Southern Pines. Well, I want to do this first one though, really around Pinehurst, around what's known as the Arboretum. I may do another one later at a place called Weymouth Woods that my grandfather helped build. So this is, it's kind of a special region to me for that reason. The other thing is by that time, the bad pollen will have passed here. Right now, the pear tree and pine pollen is crazy. Within, 3-4 weeks, that will have passed. And then you go into a really just pleasant, the temperature will probably be around 73 to 75 degrees. It's not going to be too hot. It's not going to be too cold. The trails are all handicap accessible. They're all easy. Anybody of any age should be very comfortable. And, unless you're extremely handicapped, it should be easy to get around. And it can be just a very, really pleasant place in the spring. So, go ahead and email me if you're interested, and I'll put you on, just a private list. I'm not going to add you to any big list or anything, just for updates on the plant walk. Judson@judsoncarroll.com. Or stay tuned for next week. If you live in Raleigh, Charlotte, Charleston, South Carolina, Columbia, Wilmington, Fayetteville, Chapel Hill, wherever. Chapel Hill, Sanford, all that's just right up the road. It's the center of the state, essentially. Really super easy and convenient to get to. There's even a nice airport if you wanted to fly in or something. There's train lines if you wanted to come by train. I think this is going to be like the most convenient, easy place to start a spring plant walk. Not going to be terribly expensive at all, I'm going to make it so as many people can enjoy it as possible. I don't have a price yet, probably about $50 a person. And we'll go out for probably, a few hours, and I'll show you a lot of really interesting plants. And of course, there'll be a discount for couples, and we'll figure out the kids. They're your responsibility if you bring them, is that kind of thing. And then I'm not going to charge, But I think it'll be fun. So email me if you're interested, Judson@judsoncarroll.com. If you know someone that's within, say, 2 hours from here, 3 hours from here, that would like to go out on a plant walk and learn about some of these really interesting, unique medicinal plants, yeah, tell them, send them a message and tell them to email me and get on the list. And like I said, this first one will be here. I don't know when the next opportunity will be to do another one. I'd love to do them in the Appalachians. I'd love to do them in the foothills, the Uaris, the Piedmont, the coastal plain, the swamps. I'd love to do them all over the place. And, South Carolina and Virginia and Tennessee. I mean, Georgia, all these places where I've lived and I know the plants really well. So I think it's going to be a lot of fun. So if you want to come out and get to know me, we'll spend some time together, and I will teach you about herbs and edible plants. And I can autograph a book or whatever, and it'll just be a fun time. I'm super laid back. It's not going to be a rigid. But as you know from my podcast, you're going to get a lot of information. You want to take notes. It's going to be a super intense hands-on learning experience from a very laid-back Southern guy that goes at a slow pace and talks slowly but says a lot. So now let's get into the plants, and we'll go ahead and start with the edible for this week. And it is one of the two plants called bugleweed. As I said, two plants go under the name bugleweed at least. There may be others with that common name, but the most common to me are Ajuga reptans and Lycopus. Now, Ajuga reptans is a medicinal herb that I've talked about before, did a whole podcast on it. One of my favorite herbs, and in fact, it is an herb that will be coming in abundance in Pinehurst in the spring. I can guarantee I will teach you to identify and use Ajuga reptans. It's in the mint family, considered a weed. It spreads, being in the mint family. Very beautiful ground cover, shade tolerant. It's wonderful in landscaping if you don't consider it a weed, which I don't. Edible, but it has this unique sedative and cardiotonic quality. It actually slows the heart rate, and basically like eating a couple of the flowering heads of it is like drinking a glass or two of wine. I mean, it's very relaxing. Obviously anything that affects the heart rate should be used with extreme caution, so we'll talk a lot about that. I throw it in a salad. It's really one of my favorite herbs. It's bitter. It's in my Encyclopedia of Medicinal Bitter Herbs. And as I said, I've done a whole show on that, so you can find out all about Ajuga. But Lycopus is the bugleweed, so-called, that we look for when foraging. And the reason is the roots are like small potatoes or Jerusalem artichokes. As with all such tubers, they're best friends with butter and salt and a little parsley. I mean, they're great. As much as I love my fresh spring green plants in salads or cooked as a pot herb, really nothing fills your stomach and gives you needed calories in the plant world like edible tubers or nuts. I mean, nuts are about the only thing that are more dense in nutrition, but the starches of tubers are really essential survival food, and this one's one that's really good. And one of the best ways to use it is to make fish cakes. Now, whenever I go in the woods, my top priority is to look for places to fish. Now, okay, if you're a vegetarian, a vegan, fix them however you want. I guess if you're a vegan, boil them up with some salt and pepper. If you're a vegetarian, maybe you can add some butter to that. It's going to be a whole lot better. I will certainly give them a quick boil and then toss them with some salt and pepper and some bacon grease and onions. That's good stuff. That's much more to my taste. I'm a carnivore. I'm an omnivore, actually. I'm an omnivore. There is no category of food that is natural that I don't eat. And I have many reasons for that, not just health-wise. I have biblical reasons for that. I believe God made everything, declared it good, and actually instructs us to eat a very large diet. I think it was St. Paul who said not to reject anything because God made it, and it was insulting to God to turn up your nose at it. Now that's, it's a couple weeks before Easter, and I'm thinking along those lines. You may not agree with my philosophy, but last week some girl got on my case saying that Jesus was a vegetarian. Well, first of all, it's not true. Okay, he ate the Passover meal, which includes lamb, and it was actually a sin not to eat the lamb. It was required that they eat the lamb, but also after the resurrection, the first thing he asked for was fish. He asked for fish. They baked it. He ate it. I mean, Jesus was definitely not a vegetarian. Then she said that the Bible says you have to be a vegetarian because what was it, Shadrach, what were their names? Something like Ishmael, Shadrach, and Abednego, or something like that. I can't remember right now. The three Jewish youths in Babylon were put into the furnace. Well, actually, they wouldn't eat the meat sacrificed to pagan gods. There was no prohibition against eating meat whatsoever. And actually, if you go to the Gospel of Timothy, Jesus warns that people with false and evil doctrines, actually representatives of the Antichrist, would encourage people to abstain from meat. So, if you want to get into what the Bible actually says about eating meat, because apparently a lot of religious schools are pushing this, social justice nonsense and trying to convince, environmental justice, I guess in this case, trying to convince people that the Christian duty is to be a vegetarian or vegan. And that's absolutely false. And usually very bad for your health. Now, people have different constitutions. Some people actually do better on a low-fat, low-protein diet, but most of us, especially of European heritage, do not. And like none of Native American heritage. I mean, this is a hunter-gatherer peoples. I mean, our ancestors, grew up eating a lot of meat and fat, especially. And I can tell you from my personal experience, I was a vegetarian for some years. It was very bad for my health. I started eating meat and especially animal fats and became big, strong, robust, and healthy and happy, which I wasn't happy when I was a vegetarian. And that's if you're of Indian descent or something where they have a long tradition of vegetarianism, perhaps that's better for your genetics. I'm not saying one size fits all. It's also in the Bible, that God showed to St. Peter. I think it was St. Peter in that case, a sheet with every kind of thing on it, and it included all the meats that the Jews were prohibited from eating. It included all the probably vegetables, who knows. He said, everything that was edible, fish and shellfish and said, take it all. It's all good. Don't refuse any of it. So that's my philosophy. I'm an omnivore. Well, anyway, one of my favorite things to do is to fish, first of all. I'm an avid fisherman. I take my Tenkara fly fishing rod with me in the mountains wherever I go. And, most of the streams are stocked with fish. In other areas, I'll take a few hooks and lines and either make a cane pole or run a trot line for catfish. I mean, I do a lot of surf fishing. I do a lot of fishing down at the coast. I'm good with a net. I love to fish. So probably the only fish I haven't eaten and enjoyed was a barracuda. But they don't really come around here, and supposedly they're poisonous. I don't know. It's more of a tropical fish. I have no experience with it. And the poisonous parts of a blowfish. Now, why would I say the poisonous parts? Well, here on the Carolina coast, we have just a common Carolina pufferfish. And it blows up. It inflates like a basketball almost, or volleyball. And it has really tough skin. I mean, it's like sandpaper. It's like almost impossible to cut through it. But people throw them away. And I mean, to me, that's what's sinful, is to kill something and then waste it. If you're going to kill something, eat it. At least use it for fertilizer in your garden. There's no such thing as a trash fish, okay, in my opinion. The thing about this blowfish is, again, supposedly parts of the fish are poisonous, just like the Japanese blowfish that they like to use for sushi, but contains a deadly toxin. I've been told it's specifically the liver. I've never talked with like a marine biologist who can give me the straight on that. So, going from tradition, going by what I've been taught, I only use basically the loins of the fish, 2 pieces of meat right at the back of right along the back of the spine. They're almost like chicken fingers or fish sticks. They're in shape. It's actually like the tastiest fish I know of. So when I am at the coast and I see people throwing away their, puffer fish, I ask if I can have them, and they look at me like I'm insane. And I'm hoping they're going to ask me, what would you want that for? And I will tell them, there's some of the best fish meat in existence on this fish that you're throwing away. And the rest of it can be used as fertilizer. Waste nothing. That's my philosophy. I mean, I grew up in a country kitchen with French heritage and was always told the best cooks are those that waste the least amount of food. I was told the same thing working in commercial kitchens. The best cooks waste the least amount of food. And again, as far as hunting and fishing and trapping, I think waste is actually sinful. And I would say the same thing about farming. Wasting vegetables that people can eat. It's wrong, in my opinion. At least turn it into compost and turn it back into fertilizer. Our government, I guess ever since the Nixon administration, has been incinerating millions of tons of vegetables, milk, etc. every year to keep prices stable. I think that is absolutely horrendous. Okay, I'm not. I sort of have that America First mentality. Take care of America first. But you know what? We're all the family of man, and if there are hungry people somewhere, it is absolutely a sin to waste food. I know the economic realities of that. You can't go dumping a lot of food on a country without putting their farmers out of business. I mean, you got to take these things into consideration. But, I mean, we're giving people in America food stamps. We've got hundreds of thousands of homeless, and veterans especially. They could use that food. There's got to be a better way. Why would you give someone, I don't even remember what they call it now. It's a credit card, basically, a debit card for food stamps. WIC. It's a WIC card. I think that's what it's called. Anyway, the reason they give them that is so they have to go to a store and use it. So the store owner can make money and the government it's like, it's socialism. You pay in with your taxes and then they give it back to you so you can go to the stores. That's actually fascism, actually. If there was just a simple way of providing food for people without this middleman, you cut out a lot of cost and expense. You could bring down the overall burden to the taxpayer. And any way you look at it, people eating real food, garden vegetables, real meat and milk and cheese is a whole lot better for them than eating processed chemical-laden garbage. And what are you doing? You're just enriching those processed food chemical companies. I think that's the fascist aspect. I mean, they do it that way to support the businesses. The businesses then elect the politicians then tax you to death to pay for a program that in which waste, fraud, and abuse is endemic. But anyway, all right, so I love fish. I think we got that down. Whatever fish you use, clean it and scale it if necessary. Not all fish have scales. Trout don't have scales. Catfish have a skin. They have to be skinned. They don't have scales. Sharks, really, tough skin like that blowfish. Shark meat. That people throw away sharks and skates and rays. It really makes me angry. Really makes me angry. But anyway, whatever you do, take your fish and just poach it in salted water. Take it out when the meat begins to flake, and sit it aside. Let it cool. You can season that water, absolutely. Salted water. You can put in a little wine. You can, you can put in a lemon. Always like some lemon, parsley, of course. Then put in your tubers, your wild tubers. We're using bugleweed here. We're using lycopus. Or of course, you could make a fish stew if you only had one pot, no pan. but I like to plan ahead and bring a few things with me. Like I said, some dried parsley, some lemon slices, all that. Some onions. It could be wild onions, alliums, wild leeks, ramps, or just take an onion with you. Whatever you got. Any savory herbs. Salt and pepper. Yeah. Boil everything in there. So take it out when the milk begins to flake and boil your wild tubers or potatoes in the pan. Like I said, it could be several different tubers. Most any of them, they're starchy enough will work. Of course, if you didn't bring two pots, like I use a pot and a pan, you could just make a fish stew. If you just had one pot. But, I like to plan ahead and bring a few things with me. Like I said, dried parsley, some lemon slices. I definitely like a little wine in there. I think wild onions, any savory herbs. Definitely bring a couple of eggs if you're going to make these fish patties, and salt and pepper. So when the fish is cooled and the tubers are cooked, and your tubers are cooked enough to mash, remove the tubers, mash them up, flake all the fish off the bone. Make sure you don't have any bones in there. Mash everything together with some salt and pepper, any of those herbs you want to add to it. Definitely some extra onion, whatever you like, and add an egg or two. And just mix the fish and the tubers and the egg and whatever else you like together. Make a patty, or you can make a ball and fry it in some fat. It's really that simple. You can make fish cakes out of like any kind of fish with any kind of tuber using egg as a binder, and I think they're really good. In fact, you can even use minnows or bait fish. They used to call it white bait. You sell it in restaurants. Now people, again, throw them away. Don't do that. You can absolutely use small fish because the bones, it's like sardines. You can eat them. You don't have to take the bones out. But another option, bring a can of tuna. If you're not going fishing, but you think you can find some lycopus or some Jerusalem artichokes or daylily tubers, or maybe you're home and you're just going to use some potatoes. You can make some wonderful fish cakes out of a can of tuna, can of mackerel, can of salmon. Again, it's just basically flaked fish, mashed potatoes or other tuber, egg, obviously salt, pepper, some onion and herbs, and really, really very good. Fry it in the fat of your choice. If it's got to be olive oil for you, go for it. I don't think there's anything better than bacon fat. So, as always, I'm going to recommend bacon fat. All right, so let's get on to our medicinal herb. Now, as I mentioned, this is Gnaphalium, Cudweed, sometimes called Jersey Cudweed. It's a family, really. And the one we use most in the South is rabbit tobacco, Gnaphalium obtusifolium. And it should be coming in the spring in Moore County as well. That is one of the main areas where I spot it. I actually, I've got family in the area. I spend a lot of time down here. Obviously, I'm not a golfer. It doesn't... the shopping, there's tons of shopping, by the way. If you've got somebody in your family that's into going into like dress shops and galleries and all that kind of stuff. There's theaters, there's all kinds of stuff. None of that really appeals to me. I like to just get out in the woods. So when I come in here, usually to help out a family member, I do a lot of yard work and such. And then I'll get out and walk around, and I harvest a lot of herbs down here, actually. It's really a great region for natural herbs. But anyway, the cudweed family is remarkably widespread. As I said, some species of cudweed grow only in Japan, some only in the Middle East, some on just specific certain islands. It's really interesting. But you got to wonder how these plants evolved over time, how birds spread the seeds, etc., or the wind, or it's really interesting. Yeah, that's sort of a plant geek thing. I know not everybody gets into that, but I enjoy thinking about such things, studying such things. But our cudweed likely came from England, specifically the Jersey cudweed, but the rabbit tobacco is native. And it has a long history of indigenous use. So Gerard, in the 1500s in England wrote of no fewer than 13 cudweeds. I mean, 13 just in England, right? Fortunately, he states their virtues similarly. I mean, he just called them Gnaphalium and lumped them into a category. And you'll see that their use is very similar in England as with, say, the Cherokee tradition. He says, Gnaphalium, boiled in strong lye, cleanseth the hair from nits and lice. In other words, it gets rid of lice and such. Also, the herb being laid in wardrobes and pressed keepeth apparel from moths. It's a very traditional use for this plant. Dried, it would help keep moths out of clothes. The same being boiled in wine and drunketh, killeth worms, and bringeth them forth. So it would help get rid of intestinal worms and parasites. He said it prevaileth against the bitings and stingings of venomous beasts. I'm not sure how, but in Elizabethan time that was apparently a use. But he said specifically, and this is where it's very much like the rabbit tobacco, the native rabbit tobacco, the fume or smoke of the dried herb, taken with a funnel, being burned therein, and received in such a manner as we would take the fume of tobacco. In other words, smoke it in a pipe. And he even said you could use a tobacco pipe for the same purpose. Prevaileth against the cough of the lungs, and the ache or pain of the head, and cleanseth the breast and all inward parts. Now, this is, as I said, very interesting. Even in my lifetime, smoking rabbit tobacco has been recommended as a cure for asthma and bronchitis in the Appalachians. It was actually prescribed by a doctor to my uncle when he was a child in eastern North Carolina. So, I mean, that's how important Gnaphalium or rabbit tobacco is to America, that a medical pharmaceutical doctor, an allopathic doctor, I think is what you call it. I think that may be right. I don't know. Anyway, a modern medical physician in the 1960s was still prescribing rabbit tobacco for children to smoke. You know, that's probably not going to happen today, but it is quite useful. Now, it doesn't have to be smoked. It can also be taken as a steam. There are various ways to use it. Let's see what Culpeper says in of cudweeds in the 1600s. He said the plants are all astringent or dry and binding, and therefore profitable to defluxions of rheum in the head. That means it helps with congestion of the sinuses. And it stays fluxes of blood wheresoever. That means it helps with any kind of bleeding, from menstrual to internal bleeding to whatever. The decoction made into red wine and drunk, or the powder taken therein, also helpeth the bloody flux. That would actually be bloody diarrhea. And easeth the torments that come thereby, and stayeth the immoderate courses of women. In other words, it would help with excessive menstrual bleeding. It is also good for inward and outward wounds, hurts, and bruises, and helpeth children both of bursting and the worms. Burstings, some kind of herniation. I don't know why children were getting that. I mean, it was before child labor laws? Maybe. Who knows? But obviously intestinal worms. And the disease called tenesmus, which he said was a provocation to the stool and doing nothing. I'm not sure what that means. An often provocation to the stool and doing nothing. I guess it means you feel like you got to go and you're not getting anything accomplished. I don't know. Being either drunk or injected. And that would be like an enema. The green leaves bruised and laid to any green wound stayeth the bleeding and healeth it up quickly. The juice of the herb taken in wine and milk, as Pliny saith, Pliny the Elder, Greek writer. He didn't just write on medicine, he wrote on a lot of things, is a sovereign remedy against the mumps and quinsy, and further saith that whosoever shall so take it shall never be troubled with that disease again. The tops of this plant, before it has reached its full growth, have the same virtue. And yeah, he said it was good for the almost incurable disease known as the chin cough. I have come to believe that's probably whooping cough. You know, when one is beginning to study herbalism, one thinks, I may need to learn some Latin. I really did not expect that what little training I had in reading Shakespeare in high school would come in so handy, but I probably should have paid a lot more attention. I enjoyed Shakespeare. I hate plays. I hate the theater. I'm sorry. I know that's going to offend people. I especially hate musical theater. If a Shakespearean play is done traditionally, I actually enjoy it. But modern theater, it makes a lot of alterations and changes, and I can't tell you how many times I've been dragged to a play and gotten up and left halfway through because I'm just like, this is moronic. I mean, you got people dancing around. Never mind. you know, um, let's just say I'm a bit more masculine than the average theater goer to modern plays. But yeah, I do actually have a good appreciation for Shakespeare. I liked reading Shakespeare. Did that a bit in college, but never was trained to speak the Elizabethan language. So if you hear my tongue get twisted sometimes, that happens. Anyway, by 1931, Miss Grieve said of the Cudweeds in the English tradition, again, they're not differentiating. They're talking the entire family. That by this time, it was really only used for the aforementioned condition called quinsy. Now, quinsy, I'm not sure if this condition still goes by the same title. I kind of doubt it. It's an inflammatory condition of the tonsils in which you get an abscess of pus actually behind the tonsil. That's kind of dangerous. I mean, it can actually choke you, very uncomfortable. So they made a gargle using cudweed. Again, not a specified variety of cudweed, but she said to use an infusion of 1 ounce of the dried plant to 1 pint of boiling water, taken internally in wineglass-full doses and also used as a gargle. So whereas it had many, many uses, a few hundred years earlier, 400 years earlier, by the 1930s in official medicine for England, it was only being used for this condition called quinsy, which is an inflammatory tonsil condition. Now, in the Irish tradition, John Kehoe says, it has a dry, astringent nature. A decoction in red wine is good against dysentery, hemorrhages, and all kinds of flow. So, by that time, it was still very much used in Ireland, but it's very used in Russia. Like I said, there are cudweeds specific to Asia, and I'm sure there are cudweeds specific to Russia. There it was known as everlasting, a very common name also in America. I'm not sure how that name got to America, but it's much more used, calling it everlasting than cudweed in many places. Igor. Yep. Watched Young Frankenstein so many times that I pronounced it Igor. What a genius movie that was. Gene Wilder and Terry Garr, and so funny, so very funny. Igor Vilovich Zevin writes, everlasting, known in Russia as the immortalizer, is one of the oldest Russian herbs. Early folk healers in many areas of Imperial Russia used it for centuries, and references to using cudweed can be found in several early handwritten herbals. The most common reports speak of using cudweed as a remedy for wounds and open sores, and folk healers often use cudweed preparations to relieve stomach pain. It was also known by the name toad's herb, that one I don't know, because it treated quinsy and tonsillitis, which were collectively known by the slang expression of toad, meaning, croaking voice. That makes sense. Everlasting preparations are widely used in both folk and official medicine in Russia. This book was written early 2000s. So, Gnaphalium is still official medicine in Russia. When taken internally as an infusion, Everlasting is used in relieving early symptoms of hypertension and can reduce stenocardia and heart palpitations. It reduces arterial pressure and dilates blood vessels. Infusions are used to treat headaches, insomnia, nervous excitability, asthma, diabetes, and as a gargle to treat tonsillitis and quinsy. Also used for heart palpitations and such in Southern folk medicine. So very similar. Both infusions and decoctions are considered effective for treating stomach and, I say duodenal. Apparently now modern folks say you're supposed to say duodenal. I don't know. Duodenal, if you like it, ulcers, as well as relieving symptoms of gastritis and diarrhea. As a hemostatic, that means it stops bleeding. An everlasting infusion or decoction is used to stop internal bleeding, especially of the intestines or uterus. So it's a very good, or, excessive uterine bleeding, it can be deadly. It can be really bad. You should always have shepherd's purse on hand. You should always have Candida fleabane on hand. This is another one. Gnaphalium, a cudweed, whatever you want to call it. If you have women in your life, be sure to have these on hand. It's far more common. Trust me, as an herbalist, you hear about it a lot. So, turning to the American tradition, Resources of the Southern Fields and Forests, written in the 1860s, says, it is employed in popular practice in the diseases of chest and bowels, and is externally applied as a fomentation to wounds and bruises. Ship, which was a medical journal writer, I guess, says it possesses anodyne properties. They get into some specific ones that this botanist had found and looked up. Catfoot, sweet-scented, life everlasting. That's a big name. Gnaphalium polycephalum. Andre Michaud discovered that one. He spent a lot of time in my backyard, actually. Diffused in upper and lower country, grows in pastures. He collected in St. John's, Berkeley, vicinity of Charleston. So if you know South Carolina, you know exactly where that is. I had a lot of family for that region. But in the official U.S. dispensatory, it probably possesses little medicinal virtue. However, a popular remedy in hemorrhagic affections and as a fomentation in bruises and languid tumors. The infusion is employed by the vegetable practitioners. That means herbalists, by the way. They used to call us vegetable practitioners. Don't you love that? Take 2 cucumbers and call me in the morning. In fever, influenza, and consumption, acting probably as a warm sudorific, it has a pleasant, aromatic, and slightly bitter taste when dry, and the leaves are pleasant when chewed. I employed the leaves, flowers, and stems largely as a substitute for hops whilst in charge of the South Carolina Hospital during the late war by a direction of the Surgeon General. So it has that sudorific quality. It could be used as a substitute for hops. And I guess as a bittering agent, it could probably be used like hops in beer. I don't know. I've never seen it used that way. King's Medical Dispensatory of 1898 listed the herb as astringent, and they did not differentiate. They just said cudweed, Gnaphalium. The leaves and blossoms are chewed and the juice swallowed have proven beneficial in ulcerations of the mouth and throat. A warm infusion, that's a tea essentially, may be used in fevers to produce diaphoresis. It means it helps break a fever, and is of service in quinsy, pulmonary. They got an extra letter in there. All right, I'm going to do with pulmonary complaints, leukorrhea, etc. It may be used internally and as a local application. Likewise, used as an infusion in diseases of the bowels and hemorrhages, and applied to fomentations to bruises. That just means you're basically using it as a bath or a compress, so don't worry about that. For indolent tumors and other local affections. Professor Scudder suggests investigation to determine its influence upon the reproductive and urinary structures in acute and chronic ulcerations and in digestive disorders. The fresh juice is reported as an aphrodisiac. Now, I haven't found that anywhere else. Take that with a grain of salt. But in the Cherokee tradition, Plants for Cherokee tells us that the herb was used in several formulas, but on its own was made into a tea and drunk for colds. Patricia Christie Howell tells us in Medicinal Plants of the Southern Appalachians of rabbit tobacco, the one I have most interaction with, has a long history as a remedy for both physical and psychological imbalances. American Indians relied on rabbit tobacco for general pain relief and as a muscle relaxant. It's another reason that it helped the lungs. It didn't just astringe the tissue, but it was antispasmodic. It was used extensively for respiratory problems, including coughs and colds, lung pains, and sore throats. The dried herb was smoked to relieve asthmatic symptoms and as a sedative. Rabbit tobacco was also burned as a smudge or used as a wash to treat a person bothered by ghosts or those who wanted to run away. That is specifically from the Cherokee tradition. They have a lot of, they had, in their more ancient use, I do know that modern times they like to be a little more clinical in their approach, but if you go back to the old books, you'd have formulas for people who want to run away. Well, what does that mean? Anxiety. It has a sedative effect. But then you also might have a wash to treat people bothered by ghosts. I don't know. Maybe, again, the sedative effect. Who has any idea? People who dream of snakes. Again, it's a little esoteric, to the modern ear. Rabbit tobacco has a mixed reputation as an effective medicine. Although it is a staple home remedy in many areas, it seems to have only mild therapeutic properties. Herbalist Tommy Bass used it in inhalations for cold, sinus infections, asthma, and cough. He put the plant in the kitchen sink, ran hot water over them, and had people inhale the vapors. Now, Tommy Bass is like legendary in the South. He was in the Appalachians, I believe in Alabama. Yeah. And he was one of the last well-known Appalachian herbalists. His work was preserved in the 70s and 80s, and we would have lost a ton of our tradition had it not been for Tommy Bass and the people who worked to preserve his work. Daryl Patton is another one we have to really thank. But this is more the tradition I know. This is how it was presented to me when I learned about herbs from the Hicks family in the Blue Ridge Mountains, which had a very similar tradition. They used the plant in the same way. Infusions are used as a sedative to relieve chest pains, congestion, and inflammation. And Tommy Bass literally would just run a sink full of hot water, put the herb in it, have the person stand over it with a towel over their head, and inhale the vapors. As best I understand. I never got to meet the man, obviously. But those who did, I just have a ton of respect for them and for him, Anyway, it seems that cudweeds have fallen out of popularity among British herbalists. Currently, Plants for Future has one of the shortest entries on cudweed of like any of the herbs in their books and on their website. It said medicinal uses of Jersey cudweed. Stomatic. The leaves are astringent, cholagogue diuretic, febrifuge, hemostatic, and vulnerary. The plant is used in the treatment of breast cancer in Belgium. Now, wouldn't you like to know how it's used for breast cancer in Belgium? They didn't give us any information. So you're going to have to look that one up on your own. You have to do your own research on that one. Peterson Field Guide to Medicinal Plants tells us of Gnaphalium obtusifolium. Leaves and flowers chewed or in tea are traditionally used for sore throats, pneumonia, colds, fever, upset stomach, abdominal cramps, asthma, flus, coughs, rheumatism, leukorrhea, bowel disorders, mouth ulcers, hemorrhages, tumors. It's a mild nerve sedative, diuretic, and antispasmodic. Fresh juice is considered aphrodisiac. Again, they don't tell us how or why. I don't know. Honestly, maybe it's a sedative property. Maybe it just relaxes somebody. I have no idea. Botany a Day says Gnaphalium. By the way, that's Gnaphalium. So it's Gnaphalium with a GN and a PH. Is astringent, diuretic, and diaphoretic. Used especially as a gargle for sore throat. It is also smoked for headaches or used to expel worms. I could actually use some right now. If you notice, I may be a little hoarse. Pear pollen. I'm in Moore County, and the pear trees are horrible. And yes, I have a bit of a sore throat. I'm a bit raspy. Better than last week. I didn't do some of my daily podcasts. I did the main one on Sunday before things got bad. I wasn't able to do my prepper podcast, but I had an online meeting with the Christian Herbalist Guild, and I said, I got to apologize for my voice. I'm a little hoarse, And I said, no, you sound good. I said, well, yesterday I sounded like Fred Sanford. I was like, you big dummy. Don't suck your teeth while you're talking to me, Grady. You got a face like a water buffalo. I love Fred Sanford. That character Red Fox did. My gosh. I'm going to take one other little tangent. I actually think I've mentioned this before. He grew up with the man who became Malcolm X. They were like best friends in high school. And Malcolm X went on to be a radical communist, turned people against each other, sowed anger and hatred, and he was, okay, they call him a civil rights activist. Let's say under the guise of civil rights, he promoted communism and division and hatred. His high school friend became a comedian, beloved, and showed people through, his records were pretty rough. He was pretty racy. But through that wonderful TV show, Sanford and Son, common humanality, we can all laugh at ourselves and each other and identify with each other. Red Fox did more actually for race relations and advancing the causes of whatever social justice than probably 99.9% of people who tried to do so through politics. My grandfather loved Fred Sanford, Red Fox. Old Southern gentleman, and he's sitting there just laughing his head off and identifying with him 100%. That you catch more flies with honey. That's all I'm saying. Catch more flies with honey than vinegar, as the old saying goes. Anyway, I'll finish it up with the physician's desk reference for herbal medicine states of Gnaphalium oleaginosum. I don't know which one that is. They just call it Cudweed again, but officially this is Gnaphalium Uliginosum. And no, I'm not going to try to pronounce that again. Cudweed is an astringent and stomatic. According to unconfirmed sources, the drug also has antidepressive, aphrodisiac, and hypotensive effects. Now, that's interesting. Antidepressive. So whereas before we thought maybe it's a sedative, relaxing, maybe put a little spring in your step. I don't know. I have no idea. I take all writings about herbs as aphrodisiac with like a huge grain of salt because I've used almost every herb that I tell you about. If I haven't, I tell you. So I've told you about hundreds of herbs by this point, and I haven't noticed any major change in my mood. I'll just put it that way. Who knows? So anyway, y'all, have a wonderful week. Remember the plant walks. It'll be about a month. Go ahead and email me, judson@judsoncarroll.com. I guess you can come get some cudweed yourself and see if it's an aphrodisiac. I have no idea. But that's a great long herb, and the mullein's going to be in season at the same time. The pollen, which is also a great long herb, pollen will have settled down. The bugleweed will be up. The poke, I'll tell you all about, one of my favorite herbs, Phytolacca poke. And all the trees around here with their medicinal uses. This is really a place where I can take you out and I can tell you everything about the junipers and the pines and the dogwoods and the oaks and so many different ones. The cherries and it's a pretty neat place for plants actually. And I would have loved to have been able to visit this area before it was developed as a resort golf community. this is the home of golf in America. This is like where the courses. It's a pretty unique place historically, but I would have loved to have come here, before then and actually experienced the Pine Barrens the way my ancestors must have. Some of my family actually came from here. And there's a little cabin. Maybe you can go see where some of my ancestors lived like 200 years ago if you want to. The vast pine forests and all the deer and all the game was just so plentiful around here. And now you would never know that if you just stick to the main roads and the village of Pinehurst and the village of Southern Pines and the golf courses and the grand hotels, the museum of golf, the whole bit. You'd never know that probably a few yards from where you just hit a golf ball, there are ducks and geese and beavers and raccoons and foxes. Oh my gosh, we have so many foxes around here. And the fox squirrels. I love those things. Fox squirrels are becoming rarer in North Carolina. This is one of the places where you can get to see them. They're huge. I mean, we got big gray squirrels. Gray squirrels around here can get probably up to a good 2 pounds, maybe even bigger. Big gray squirrels. Fox squirrels can be about twice that size. It looks like a big mink or a weasel, but it's a squirrel. And they are such neat critters. Love to watch the fox squirrels. I don't hunt them. I let them be. They don't have enough habitat. That's what's happening is their habitat's being wiped out. My ancestors probably lived off of them. But now their habitat's being wiped out. And they're not as like active and playful as the gray squirrels. They don't chase each other around. It's just, it's one of those really unique animals you can get to experience in a place like this that you're not going to see most other places. Big blue herons will probably still be out fishing, and the turtles will definitely be out by that time. I don't have a permit to take turtles around here. I'm sorry, I won't be able to fix you my famous turtle soup. But we can definitely explore their habitat and show you the aquatic plants that they eat, many of which you can eat, and many of which have medicinal value. And anyway, it's got its good points and its bad points, but in the spring of the year, it really is one of the very best places to get out in a very comfortable, just nice place and identify a lot of unique herbs that and more common herbs that you will find very, very useful. So I hope you'll be able to take advantage of it. Maybe I can do this about once a year, but this will be the first one. So anyway, y'all, Judson@JudsonCarroll.com. Drop me a line, let me know if you're interested, and I will talk to y'all next week.
The information in this podcast is not intended to diagnose or treat any disease or condition. Nothing I say or write has been evaluated or approved by the FDA. I'm not a doctor. The U.S. government does not recognize the practice of herbal medicine, and there is no governing body regulating herbalists. Therefore, I'm really just a guy who studies herbs. I'm not offering any advice. I won't even claim that anything I write or say is accurate or true. I can tell you what herbs have been traditionally used for. I can tell you my own experience and if I believe an herb has helped me. I cannot nor would I tell you to do the same. If you use an herb anyone recommends, you are treating yourself. You take full responsibility for your health. Humans are individuals and no two are identical. What works for me may not work for you. You may have an allergy, a sensitivity, an underlying condition that no one else even shares and you don't even know about. Be careful with your health. By continuing to listen to my podcast or read my blog, you agree to be responsible for yourself, do your own research, make your own choices, and not to blame me for anything ever.